Hello, friends! I have a very special book to share with you today. It's brand new. I just got it and I'm really excited about it. I want you to pay extra close attention and see if you recognize anything in the book that we might have talked about in class. Think about the names of the two artists in the book. They're a little silly, but see if you recognize them. When Pigasso Met Mootisse by Nina Laden. There once was a young pig named Pigasso. While the other piglets rolled in the mud and played games, Pigasso painted. He painted anything and everything, and in a most unusual way. At the same time, there once was a young bull named Mootisse. Mootisse was not like the other bulls. He wasn't interested in bullfighting. Mootisse was happy only when he painted pictures, and he painted big, bold, bright pictures. In time, a word of Pigasso's talent spread. Throughout the pig provinces. Soon, art-loving pigs from all over lined up to buy his creations. At the same time, Mootisse was getting famous in the cattle community. There weren't many households that didn't own a moosterpiece. Picasso and Mootisse were becoming art superstars. But this came with a price. Everybody wanted to see them. Art buyers, art sellers, art students, art historians, art groupies. It was an art attack. One day, Pigasso got fed up and said, "I'm tired of this noisy pig pen." At the same time, Mootisse declared, "I'm sick of this crowded cow town." Needing a change, they both decided to look for a peaceful place where they could paint without distractions. So each of the two artists looked far and wide for the perfect spot. Pigasso found a lovely farm looking toward the east. Mootisse found a handsome farm facing the west. After Pigasso moved in, he went to introduce himself to his new neighbor across the road. At the same time, Mootisse went to introduce himself to his new neighbor across the road. That is how Pigasso met Mootisse. And coincidentally, that is how Mootisse met Pigasso. At first, Pigasso and Mootisse were friendly and welcomed each other as neighbors. But soon, things began to change. It started one day when Pigasso criticized one of Mootisse's paintings. Then Mootisse made fun of one of Pigasso's. Mootisse called Pigasso an art hog. Then Pigasso called Mootisse a mad cow. Mootisse quipped, "You paint like a 2-year-old. Pigasso retorted, "You paint like a wild beast." Mootisse raged, "Your colors look like mud." Pigasso spat, "Your paintings look like color by numbers." Then things got really out of hand. It was a modern art mess. Pigasso stormed off into his house. "That Mootisse doesn't like my art," he huffed. "Well, I'll show him." And Mootisse bullied his way into his house. "I'll give that Pigasso something he can really criticize," he snorted. Then a full-scale feud erupted, but it was a most unusual battle. Armed with ladders and buckets of paint, Mootisse launched the first attack. He started at dawn. By the end of the evening, he had succeeded in transforming the outside of his house into a monster-sized masterpiece. Not to be outdone, Pigasso fired up his paintbrushes and, in full view of the enemy, counterattacked. He turned his farm into a huge and outrageous pork of art. The two artists then retreated into their houses and pulled down the shades. Pigasso certainly didn't want to look out his window and stare at a masterpiece. Pigasso certainly didn't want to look out his window and stare at a Mootisse, and Mootisse had no desire to give his rooms a view of a Pigasso. This presented a problem, and there seemed to be only one solution. Without a word to each other, Pigasso and Mootisse each began to build a huge wooden fence down the middle of their road. At first, Pigasso and Mootisse seemed satisfied. Both artists went back to painting by themselves. But after a while, Pigasso was surprised to find that he missed that bull-headed Mootisse. At the same time, Mootisse found his studio empty without the presence of pig-headed Picasso. Pigasso pondered. That Mootisse isn't such a bad artist. He has some interesting ideas. Mootisse moaned. That Pigasso may not paint like me, but he knows what he's doing. However, being naturally pig-headed and bull-headed, neither artist knew how to apologize to each other, so they did what they do best. They let their paintbrushes do the talking. Pigasso painted on one side of the fence, and Mootisse painted on the other. Each worked until they were exhausted. It was strangely quiet when they were done. Then, curious to see what Mootisse had been doing, Pigasso sprinted around the other side. At the same time, Mootisse galloped over to Picasso's side. The silence was broken as the two artists began laughing at their amazing work of art. From that day on, Pigasso and Mootisse became great friends. They happily looked down on the fence and shared their different views. A few months later, a big museum bought the fence. Pigasso called his side when Pigasso met Mootisse. Mootisse called his side when Mootisse met Pigasso. The critics called it incredible. Hey, I hope that you liked that book. I think it's so fun. But, and here's a little spoiler alert, it's not actually about a pig and a cow. It's about two artists, Picasso and Mootisse. those names might sound familiar to you because we've talked about both of them already this year. Mootisse we talked about first. He was the one that used his scissors sometimes to make his shapes, and then he would glue them all together to make his pictures. And Picasso was the one that made some crazy faces that we looked at. They didn't all line up. They didn't really look like what we think of. They don't really look like what we think a face looks like. So they're two different styles of art. They do things differently. That's why they got into a fight in the book. So, I want you to open up to a blank page in your sketchbook. Find something in your house. It could be the food you're eating, or a toy, or your pet, and I want you to draw it twice. I want you to try and draw it in both styles. So first, do Picasso's style. See, it's kind of blocky. It's a little funky. And then there's Mootisse style. His things have flat colors. Now you don't have to cut and glue paper to look like Mootisse's. You can just do some basic shapes and color them in one color. Have fun creating, and don't forget, I want to see what you make, so send me a picture.